to episode 10. I'm Roger Curlin. This is Miguel Miranda. We're going to be talking about design, the menu, for this particular episode. So as I talked about in episode 9, I'm really hungry right now, and so this is going to be a hard episode for me to get through. But really, the overview of this episode is there are hundreds of moving pieces in every hospitality business. I feel there is no one moving piece that affects the profitability of a business like the menu. And so having that discussion now, we have a window of time coming out of this crisis to potentially reinvigorate, and redirect the menu. And so we want to have that discussion today for our hospitality partners out there to think about that. And really, there are 5 aspects to the menu that we'll talk about today. One is the brand of your menu and your establishment. 2 is pricing for the product and prep time. 3 is the pricing for the guest. 4, structure and design of the menu. And then finally, selling the menu. So those are the topics we're going to scoot through in this episode. Miguel, if you could take just a couple of minutes and talk about the brand and what our partners should be focusing on with their brand and how the menu relates to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're a restaurant, so people are coming out to eat and they want to enjoy something that's generally is going to fall under a certain category of either a nationality, cuisine style, or even dietary style. But being clear of what that is up front, even if you're a diner that has that 50-page menu, fit to the brand is really going to be key in executing. But it's not just what you offer, but the portion sizes, the price points, how it's plated. Is it a carry-out or dine-in mentality? All these things need to fit together and make sense. It's almost like, let's take it for example, going to an event and they have past hors d'oeuvres or past food, right? And they give you something that requires you to actually, maybe it's like a cut of beef with asparagus, but the pieces are so big that you need a knife and fork, and then you turn around like, well, we're having a conversation over business, and then how do I eat this thing? And so what ends up happening in most of these events I go to is I don't eat. Even though you're passing food, I'm like, it's a very cumbersome thing because it doesn't fit what the occasion is, which is something you can quickly eat, not get stuff in your teeth, and be able to have a conversation while you network. And so that's an example, but I think that you can explain it out to your business. What is the brand and brand style what your cuisine is going to be? Is it family style? Is it a buffet style? All these things you need to take a look at. Does it fit or does it not fit? Back when I used to work for Capitol Grill, I remember when we found out, I got a phone call. I was in New York City and we had to have a partners conference call, and we had a conference call early that morning. So all the partners from around the country had to get on the conference call that afternoon. We were trying to figure out what was going on, and we were told that day that we were merging with Darden. Which, by the way, when Darden merges with you, we're being bought out. But nonetheless, we were merging with Darden, and all of the partners were texting. We were texting each other. We're thinking, oh no, we're going to have a salad bar in the middle of the Capitol Grill, And why would we think that? Because we start wondering, we're mixing in Olive Garden and Red Lobster into the Capitol Grill, and that menu would not have fit what we were trying to accomplish. We were so worried about that, and thankfully, the leaders in that situation recognized that we were something very different and didn't mess with it. And so looking at your brand, what it stands for, what you're trying to deliver is the first thing you have to figure out for your experience.
Well, and I think that the branding too is it's all about looking at what you had going into this crisis and what you're going to have coming out of the crisis, and how that menu is shaped and how it still keeps your brand there but provides you opportunities. So looking at every category, looking at apps, desserts, sides, add-ons, entrees. So looking across that entire, there's going to be strengths and weaknesses, but you have an opportunity, I feel now, to take some of those weaker areas and pick the game up for them. You want to see what has sold in the past. There's been a large shift to comfort food the past couple of months. How much that's retained, we don't know, but there may be some shifting that goes in that as well that you can still do within your brand and talk to your customer the same way. I always tell people though, be careful of identity and signature dishes. Don't mess with their plating, their size, their smell. You really want to keep those as authentic as possible, I feel. And if you don't understand the value of that, try to get rid of that signature or identity dish, or talk to a restaurateur that has, And those are very difficult things to do. If something hasn't sold well before, I say get rid of it, right? That's important. I also look at a depth of menu. So most consumers can identify a place that has a limited menu, has a fresh menu, has a what I call a varietal menu, or an expansive menu. Right. Can you say Cheesecake Factory, one of the biggest menus out there, right? So a customer knows, and brands oftentimes, the size of the menu. And so you're probably going to want to stay in that same parameter, although if you feel like you need to grow your customer base, maybe a pivot is there. So that kind of wraps that thought for us on what we need to do with the brand. Pricing of product is so critical now with prices going everywhere. So Miguel, if you talk for a minute about what I call pricing for product and prep time. Those are two pieces.
Well, first and foremost, I think a lot of restaurateurs don't have a really good handle of what they call their recipe cost and those things, and they may have an inkling. They may probably go through their high-priced items, so they know what their protein costs, and they have a generalized idea, but they haven't really thought through what it's really going to cost them in the end. So, and then you have another group of people that actually know their food costs for that recipe. In other words, they know that they're buying a pork butt, they're going to cook it off, and then they're going to have some shrinkage, probably about a 40% loss, and then they're going to probably cook it again, and they know about how much is going to be on every single item going out, and so that helps them out, and they stop there. And the key that you're alluding to is what is the total cost to produce that item, and that's why we always go to prime cost, which is really your cost of goods sold and your labor. And that to me is what you have to look at, because here you have some options. Right. You could be a scratch kitchen, but you could realize at this point the labor model for a scratch kitchen 100% doesn't fully help us right now. Now we can be scratch on the things that matter the most, that secret sauce or that the way you brine something or whatever else. Right. But you could bring in other items that are pre-prepped for you because the financial model works better that way. And same as we've talked about other episodes, ROI, return on investment. What is a return on investment? In this case, guest satisfaction, whether you yourself, Roger, dice up that onion, or if I buy it pre-diced from my purveyor. And so you can look at, well, it's great because Roger did it. That's awesome, but if it changes my food costs or my recipe costs, then we may need to hold back a little bit. And these are things you need to take a look at, is what is the process, and whether it may potential to get rid of somebody or not have less people, or you realize, you know what, I need to bring some prep back in because they're there, but they're not doing enough. Right. And so I can make my money back. And yeah, typically, if you cut it in-house yourself, it could be cheaper than if you had it processed elsewhere, but depends on the intensity and complexity of it. So understanding the actual workflow of that dish is really, really important.
Right. What about speak to reviewing recipes for adjustments in ingredients, portions, plating, and side items?
Okay. So let's go back to the example of, let's talk about carnitas, right? Which is a typical Mexican dish, whether you're doing for taco bowls or burritos or whatever else. And you see it in a lot of different places. I'll tell you right now, unfortunately, pork is hard to get. So if you get it, you got to be careful with it. What are you doing? How are you going to cook it? Right. If you don't understand the shrinkage you're going to have out of that dish, you're going to miscalculate your food costs. Right. If you miss out on the fact that some of the processes, like for instance, you need to make sure you're adding some back of the grease as you hold it. That way it doesn't dry out. If it does dry out, usually which is the top part, most people don't store grease on top of the top part. It dries out. Now you can't use it. And so you've lost even more. The yield is lost even more. Right. And so understanding your process of how you making something, look back at your recipes, make sure your prep team knows, hey, these are some critical things you have to do, so we can maximize our yield. It's going to be really important. And also looking at what the base price you're paying from your purveyors. So what's your base price? What is the yield per dish? And then how is it being manufactured or kept? That way you can either lengthen your shelf life or get more per product per pound. Right,
and right now with prices fluctuating on multiple items and going out of the range of typical menu profitability, you've got to be really smart, especially if you're launching a slimmer menu right now of what you're doing, portions, etc. A big thing that happened in 2008, and it went under the radar for the most part, is a lot of companies, instead of getting 6 Twinkies in the package and each one was 3 ounces, they went to 2.5 ounces of Twinkie, or they actually, something that had 8 in it before, now the box has 6. Right. So that's portion control. And so that you may be able to reportion some of the dishes that you're doing with no loss in the experience of the consumer or value to the consumer, but it comes right to your bottom line.
Well, something you said before, the fact that generally American restaurants want to feed you for 4 or 5 meals per entree. Right. And so here's an opportunity where you can reduce that down to maybe you only have a little bit of leftovers as opposed to an entire meal, depending on the individual. Mm-hmm. But do keep in mind, how are you going to present it? Right. So if in the past you gave a plate and of tons of ribs and it's overflowing because you had a bigger plate, now you're going to back off on the size of that portion, and you still have that same large plate, you may have an issue there.
Buy a smaller plate.
Correct. Right. So you may take a look at your plateware, which again is an expense, but it will pay off in the long term. It's an investment, and so it's not a flat out expense, it's a return investment. You're able to sell something maybe at the same price you had before, but for less product going out the door.
Yeah, I'm also a firm believer when we're talking about pricing for product and prep time, you've got to set your prices, not only for today, but for tomorrow, for profitability. You have to do that. The opportunity now is the consumer has been away from most of our restaurants long enough to really forget prices, locations on menu, things like that. So now is the perfect time to reset those prices. And I always talk to my partners about your customer is not going to be upset when you tell them, we want to maintain a high quality of food and service here. Our prices continue to go up, and the price, the value, the price you're paying is the value we're giving you. And so the consumer is probably at its lowest level of understanding that price fluctuation, but you've got to reset those. You just have to be a successful business. The next part, did you have a comment on that?
Quick,
yep.
You do recognize that when you're making adjustments to your price, there is a psychological aspect that you cannot go beyond certain numbers.
Yes.
And so if you're not cognizant of that, you may price yourself out on a long term. People feel that, oh, you know what, Roger's place is a little too expensive, because that burger, which used to be $9.99, is now $10.50.
Sure.
And so you think, well, what is that 50 or 51 cent difference? Well, what it does, it made me think differently about the situation. So how can you offset that? And we have situations in other parts of the country where the minimum wage has jumped up. There's actually service charges are being added to the entire menu.
Right.
And you could look at, well, were people okay with that? Well, they're okay when explained why. We're paying our staff more, so we're having an additional service charge, and they're only adding to the food, not to the alcohol, meal bill, and so they're able to get more revenue. And you could look back, well, just increase the menu price. They realize we can't increase the menu price anymore because we don't want them to psychologically think we're a more expensive restaurant. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they're paying the same amount of money. It's just how you present it on the menu is really, really important. For instance, hamburgers, I like to have them a plain burger at a low cost, and then you can build up whatever you want, create your own monster. And if my burger ends up being $18, which it usually does when I do those things,
sure,
I'm okay with it.
You did it.
I did it to myself. Yeah. You didn't do it to me, you gave me an option. But when I'm perusing the menu, especially when you look at Yelp, Google, and all those things that classify how expensive your restaurant is,
sure,
if you want to keep it maybe the $1 sign or maybe at most a double dollar sign, it's really about what the average menu price is going to be. Yeah. You don't get to designate it. They look at your menu pricing and they're going to say this is how expensive the place may or may not be.
That's great, Miguel. And that's the pricing for guests, right? And there's a science behind it. And as you said, there are aspects to when you put the dollar sign. Do you have 99 cents, 95 cents, 50 cents, a clean number? Where you put those on the menu, all very important. And I call it design a dish. That can be done for anything. It can be done for entrees. It can be done for appetizer. Build your own appetizer. All that stuff, and then the consumer is more comfortable with the price because they've designed it. I look at Apple, small company. They have a baseline price, and then you add on all different things to get that price keeps going up, whether it's more memory or a special color. So this is something in every industry that's has been found of value.
Chipotle's done it famously with the avocado. You get your bowl, and do you want avocado? Do you know it's going to be extra?
Right.
And it's almost to the point that quit telling me what we know it is. I'm going to get it anyways. I don't care.
Right.
But my mind said that burrito is only $9.99, even though I end up paying $14 every single time. Let's add up everything else to it.
And although some restaurants may have never done this before, pizza has done it forever. Yeah. Item, and at the end you've got your $20 pizza, but it's your pizza. You designed it that way. There's also, we feel there's going to be value-focused diners that will be coming back to the dining experience, especially because some may have lost jobs or fearful of losing jobs, or loved ones lost jobs. So I'm of the belief you do not try to plummet your menu down all to a value base. You're not going to win on that account. But I do believe in having value options inside your menu. Just because it's a value option doesn't mean it's not profitable. McDonald's makes a lot of money on $1 fries. But I feel like you've got to craft that and have that inside your menu right now. Although understand, I think a lot of people that are coming out to eat right now in this first wave, they're just wanting to get out.
Oh yeah.
They're wanting, but to get them back again, I feel like you've got to have that category there and do it in a way that's presentable, that doesn't interfere with your brand. We've talked a little bit about this in previous episodes, but we want to dive a little bit deeper on the structure and design of the menu. So we know historically what menus have looked like at restaurants. They're sometimes the elegant parchment with the leather bound, all the way to the new paper that is the plastic feeling paper. We've got a lot of hygiene concerns that are now going to happen out there. So really you've got three options. You've got paper one use. You have those other classic menus, which you've got to sanitize heavily after every use, or you can go digital. And that's not to say whatever decision you make today for right now is permanent, right? But I think you want to look at those three and what's the cost and what's the return on investment for all of those. Thinking about the time that it's going to take to sanitize a 4-piece laminated menu. So you may want to go with digital. There are great companies out there now that can, as Miguel alluded to in another episode, where you can put your entire menu digitally on the smartphone through the Wi-Fi system. So when the server comes in images and picture, there's very elaborate ways to do digital. So what are your thoughts, Miguel, on choosing those and what the customer is going to appreciate?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need to be mindful of your bias to what you may want. And the reason I say that is one of the brands I used to work with, high-end, upscale, I went to visit them years after I left working with them to have dinner, and they brought me their wine list, which was an iPad. And honestly, for me, it took me back a little bit. I'm like, wow, it seemed very impersonal, right, considering I'm spending a lot of money to come here. Until I started looking at it, what did the iPad have for that wine list? This is a place that has about between 600 to about 900 different varietals. And so I was able to, based off my flavor profile that they quizzed me on there, hone down to a couple different options I could go into. And each wine, doesn't matter which one I picked, had a background on what it was, where it came from, and everything else, which is very different from the big, huge tomes of just listings of every single line.
Well, and hoping the server.
And so two things would happen here. Looking at it, it was a very smart move on their part. One was customer service actually went up. I was able to really figure out what wine it was, because generally it wouldn't have happened if you've been to one of these places. Either you look for a wine that you're like, okay, I recognize that brand. Like, I just don't know. Or
the country.
Right, or that country. Like, it's just way too much. It's over the top. I don't want to say, especially if you're in a group, you're in a business meeting, right, whatever else, like, it's just a pain. Or you're asking the server, which, right, great, you get to ask that individual, and most of them in those places are trained and they know a lot, and you can still ask them that question. It wasn't, right, you couldn't do that before with the new iPad. But the point being is that you're dependent on what they're saying. And trust me, I've worked in those situations. You were also dependent on what the server likes. And I would see the same server selling the same bottle of wines over and over again. Not that he was pushing it, it's just that was his style, so he went down that direction. But the other piece of it is, I'm looking from a labor model.
Right.
How much time does it take for that server to hang out at your table and explain the entire thing? Well, it took a while, and it also meant that that server could only handle so many tables.
Right.
The iPad now allowed them to actually, and again, an upscale where you're charging about $100, $120 per person, they could take care of more tables, right, because the technology is supporting them. And so I say all this, that I initially looked at the iPad saying, I would never go there. Right. I will never use that. Or maybe, right, we're a quick serve concept and I want them to come back and see a smiling person, right, versus having a kiosk where you can actually do a touch screen and order yourself. Right. So be mindful that your business could transition.
Right.
So I like digital. Right. Now there is a upfront cost to get started if you're doing iPads and things like that.
Right.
But it does save you time. It does give you some flexibility. I mean, honestly, if you're throwing out paper over and over again, it's going to get expensive.
Yeah.
We're in new times, and I don't believe this is going to change. We're not going to be in a situation where this is only for a few months and then we go back to the old way. This is, to me, kind of 9/11, where you can no longer go to the gate with your friend who's going to fly away. You still have to stay back. I don't think these things are going to change anytime soon.
I'm a huge fan of digital menus.
So I think the investment you're going to make is going to be worthwhile versus thinking, it's a lot of money. It's only for a few months. It will go back to normal before. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, but there's platforms out there, digital menus for the whole year, $150 with the software that it takes. That's like crazy. What's the cost of printing one menu and with quarterly reprints or even semi-annual?
Kind of going back to our financial conversation we had in other episodes, that those are kind of costs that people don't consider.
Right.
It's kind of akin to when the kitchen display systems first came out, and you ask any cook, you show them a kitchen display system, you show them the receipt printer.
Right.
If they're old school or even just never worked with one, 9 times out of 10 said, give me the receipt printer. They're used to it.
Yeah.
You ask them again a month after they've used it or 2 months, they will never go back to paper.
Yeah.
But if you're looking from a financial point of view, if you add up how much paper you actually purchased throughout the year, it's astronomical. It's a huge cost.
Yeah.
So actually, along that line, it's a different episode, but I'll talk about it. Ask your customer, do you want a receipt? Do you want a copy of a receipt? It will save you so much money in that part. But go back to the menu. I would say definitely. I like digital. I think it's the right way to go.
And you want to make sure you've got your boilerplate, raw foods being consumed, autograt. You want to make sure you've got all that on there. One of the things that I also talk about is, to me, weekly and daily specials give the menu some contour and add more to the experience. And so going back to slimmer menus, refined menus, but still having those weekly and daily specials. I've never seen this, and so I don't know if I need to trademark it, but a blended market price where you have your MP, but then have a range of where it's going to be at. So you're pretty much low end, high end, seasonally on something. So again, maybe I trademarked that, but because when you just see MP, there's a lot of people that are not going there right now.
That's expensive.
Right.
That's the impression. Right. It's so expensive that you have to.
Right.
You won't commit to a price.
Right.
It's not because it fluctuates.
Right.
Now we do it because we're thinking, it fluctuates. I don't want to commit to a price. From the consumer point of view, they're thinking you're not committing to a price because it's expensive.
Right.
It's not even considerate sometimes.
Right.
Again, if you have a digital menu, you can update it every single day.
Absolutely.
So not a big deal.
Absolutely.
And take things off that you don't have available.
And then that goes back to the wine. I want that wine. Well, come back. Oh, I'm sorry. How many times has that happened? We're out of that wine today, and then go with that conversation.
There's a concept in Philadelphia. They're a wine and beer shop with great cheeses and charcuterie.
Right.
They actually built their iPad for a solution for their beer program and wine program. It is actually tracking their inventory. So as a keg taps out, it drops automatically off the iPad, no longer available.
Ding, 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 sold.
There you go.
So you want to build profitability into what I call the must-haves on the menu. So well-known entrees are going to draw a customer in, but it's all of those other pieces to the menu, those apps, those desserts, those other things that are going to flavor the experience and add to the profitability of that ticket. So you want to design your menu in such a way that those things are appealing, that they come out to the customer, et cetera. So we want to make sure we have that. Desserts are oftentimes, most restaurateurs I talk with, it's under 10% of the tables get dessert. That could be a whole nother episode, but rethink how you're doing desserting, absolutely. Think of group participation items. Fantastic. Little tiny dessert tastings that are delivered where everybody kind of takes a nibble of several things. Great. We just have a couple of minutes left in this episode. Miguel, let's talk about selling the menu. And again, we're going to go into this a little bit deeper in a future episode, but real briefly, talk about selling a menu.
So the reality is I want to create an experience for you if I'm your server or if I'm your menu board. I want to allow you to pick and choose things that it makes an overall great experience. And so most places when you go to it, it's going to be, I'm going to get an entree. And I would say that probably 9 out of 10 individuals walk into a restaurant, they're going to get an entree. And so whether it's a special or a menu item or something that's been there forever or a new special, a new menu item itself, really having those items on there, it's great, but from a dollar revenue coming in, it's gonna be the exact same amount.
Right.
Generally, most features, and I recommend, be around the same price point as your menu items. It doesn't do any better to have a featured item that is twice as much as everything else, unless you're gonna have a limited amount of sales.
Right.
And so, to me, having creativity on what I call the outsides of the menu really rounds out that menu, that sell, that ability to get in something. So have your chefs or yourselves, or as you're looking to introduce new featured items, let it be an appetizer or a dessert.
Yeah.
It's something for the staff to talk about. So if you come into my establishment, you're going to get your entree or the feature. It's going to be really no selling. You're hungry, I'm here, I'm taking your order. That's not a sell.
Right.
The selling item saying, hey, that dish you got to try this appetizer. This calamari with this hot cherry peppers are amazing.
Yes.
You really need to enjoy that.
Right.
It's sauteed in garlic butter. I mean, it just brings out all the flavor. I use that one is because it's one of my restaurants I used to work at. We sold that. Right. It was our pan-fried calamari with hot cherry peppers. We sold that more than anything else. Right. We were actually known for it. Right. It was something we kept pushing, and everybody. I mean, you see people who are regulars would tell the new people, "Oh, we got to get the calamari." It's what they're known for. So the entrees were sold. We had an additional sale, which made the experience rich. Right. But we sold that calamari for $12. It cost us $1 or $2.
Right. Sure.
We made a lot of money off that. Same thing for our desserts. Right. So really selling that experience. But I do caution: don't try to oversell. Yeah. Don't slam things down people's throats. Make sure you're selling the experience, you're selling the loyalty, but give yourself an opportunity, a fighting chance to have more bullets available to for the battle. And look at the outsides. Desserts, a great salad, a great soup, a great appetizer will hopefully accompany that individual.
Right. As we expand that in a future episode, Miguel, what I like to say is server must see themselves as an entrepreneurial tour guide. If they're not doing that, they're diminished in their value to you. Right? Why not just have a pad that people could order from the table? Gestures, inflections, facial expressions, help guide the guest to where you want them to go, and they have a better experience, right? Couple quick last thoughts. Many locations have come to understand the value of take-home, delivery, meal kits, make it home, all of those things. Wow, that's a great way to put that information on your menu, and also as an add-on. As we close up your ticket tonight, can I interest you in a lasagna for lunch tomorrow? We've got a special on those tonight, etc. So 60 seconds, final thoughts, Miguel, on this episode?
Final really big thought is the fact, and you said it just now, I love the idea with the lasagna to go. There is a cost associated with your menu that is rarely calculated, which is the mise en place setup and the breakdown cost. Every time you're going to set up a brand new dish you're going to prep, that's time that is not normally calculated. Right. Usually look at how much time it's going to cost to cook something or whatever else. So the more often you can actually make more in bulk, the better for you. So that lasagna example is perfect. Why? Because we can easily knock that out. Right. It's a great cost item, but labor-wise is awesome. And so if you're going to go sell it, we know it's a great dish. Take it home with you. We're seeing a lot more places have the displays by the host stand where you can have prepackaged cold meals, whether it's the pizzas, pastas, or whatever else you can take with you. It definitely is going to help you out. You have to be yourself a maverick and thinking of the menu. It's got to be something different than before.
All right, I'm hungry. I'm going to eat now, Miguel. Thank you guys. See you on the next episode.